Emma Caldwell adjusted the baseball cap over her short, dark wig, glancing at her reflection in the store's glass doors. The disguise was simple: faded jeans, a loose polo, and a name tag that read Anna Miller. It was a far cry from the crisp blazers and tailored dresses she usually wore as the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises. But today, she wasn't a CEO. She was just another sales associate stepping into one of her own stores, blending into the fluorescent-lit aisles like any other employee. She had made this decision after weeks of receiving complaints, whispers of overworked employees, unfair treatment, and a toxic work environment. On paper, Caldwell Enterprises prided itself on fair wages and ethical leadership. But reality lived beyond boardroom reports. The only way to know the truth was to see it herself. The moment she stepped inside, the sharp scent of floor cleaner and plastic packaging filled her lungs. The store was busy, customers pushing carts down narrow aisles, employees weaving between them with forced smiles. Near the register, a woman caught Emma's eye. She moved quickly, placing items back on the shelves with a kind of efficiency that only came from repetition. Her name tag read Lisa Carter. Lisa was in her early 30s, her hair pulled into a tired ponytail, deep shadows lingering under her eyes. Yet, despite her exhaustion, there was something resilient about her, a quiet determination in the way she straightened items on a shelf or offered a polite nod to a passing customer. Emma watched as Lisa shifted her weight, wincing slightly before continuing her work. "Anna, right?" Lisa asked as she approached, her voice warm despite the fatigue behind it. "I'm Lisa. Greg said I should train you today." Emma nodded, feeling an unexpected wave of guilt. Lisa thought she was another struggling worker, someone who needed guidance. If only she knew who she was really talking to. Lisa led Emma through the aisles, explaining the layout, the inventory system, and the unspoken rules of the job. The work itself wasn't complicated, but the pace was relentless. Within an hour, Emma noticed the sweat forming on Lisa's brow, the way her fingers moved a little slower each time she lifted a box. A sharp voice cut through the air. "Lisa, you call this organized?" A man in his late 40s strode toward them, his crisp button-up stretched over his stomach, a deep frown carved into his face. "Greg Thompson, the store manager." Lisa immediately straightened. "I was just about to." Greg snatched a product from the shelf, turning it in his hand as if it were a piece of evidence in a crime scene. "This is sloppy. We don't have time for almost. Do it right the first time." Emma felt her jaw tighten. The mistake was minor, barely noticeable. But Lisa simply nodded, accepting the scolding without argument. As Greg turned away, he threw a glance at Emma, his lip curling slightly. "And you, new girl, you better not slow her down." Lisa gave Emma a small, apologetic smile before continuing her work. Emma, however, remained still, watching Greg retreat. There was no respect in the way he spoke, no acknowledgement of Lisa's hard work. Just control. As the hours passed, Emma saw more of it. Lisa took on tasks no one else wanted, lifting heavy boxes, covering for absent employees, calming angry customers. Yet, every time Greg or the assistant manager, Vanessa, walked by, it was as if Lisa were invisible. When Lisa finally took a short break, Emma sat beside her in the small, dimly lit break room. Lisa let out a slow breath, rolling her shoulders. "You've been here long?" Emma asked, keeping her voice casual. Lisa gave a tired chuckle. 3 years. Emma raised an eyebrow. 3 years, and he still treats you like that? Lisa shrugged, taking a sip from her water bottle. "It's just how it is. Some of us don't have the luxury of walking away." The weight behind those words settled deep in Emma's chest. This wasn't just a job to Lisa. It was survival. Before she could respond, the door swung open. Vanessa, the assistant manager, leaned against the frame, her expression pinched with irritation. "Break's over. We've got a mess in aisle 5, and I don't have time to babysit." Lisa barely hesitated before standing. Emma followed, feeling something simmer beneath her skin. These people didn't just ignore Lisa's effort. They thrived on exploiting it. The final straw came near the end of the shift. A well-dressed customer, impatient and irritated, waved Lisa over. I need this in a different size, the woman said, holding up a sweater. Lisa scanned the rack. I can check in back for you. The woman sighed dramatically. Do you have to? Can't you just tell me now? Lisa kept her composure, but Emma noticed the slight clench of her jaw. I just need a moment to. Unbelievable, the woman muttered, turning toward Greg, who happened to be nearby. Is this how your employees treat customers? Greg barely glanced at Lisa before nodding at the customer. I'll take care of it. Then, turning to Lisa, his voice sharpened. Are you serious? You can't even handle one request. Lisa opened her mouth, but no words came out. The customer smirked, as if enjoying the show. Emma's hands curled into fists. She wanted to step in to tell Greg exactly who she was, but she knew that moment wasn't meant for now. She had to see this through. She had to understand everything. Lisa's eyes dropped to the floor. I'll get the size. No need, Greg snapped. You've done enough. He turned back to the customer. I'll have someone competent help you. Lisa stood there for a moment before quietly turning away. Emma exhaled slowly. Now, she wasn't just here to observe. She was here to act. Lisa didn't complain. No matter how many times she was berated, overworked, or dismissed, she swallowed her pride and kept moving. But Emma saw it, the subtle wear in her steps, the way she clenched her fists when Greg or Vanessa turned their backs. It was the look of someone who had endured too much for too long. Emma had come here to confirm suspicions. Now, she was gathering proof. She started small, careful not to draw attention. While restocking shelves, she listened, her ears catching murmurs of frustration from other employees. They whispered about Greg's favoritism, Vanessa's tendency to delegate her own work, and the unspoken rule that if you questioned management, your hours mysteriously disappeared. Emma pretended to fumble with the pricing scanner near the break room, overhearing a conversation between Greg and Vanessa. She's so damn needy, Vanessa muttered, always asking for schedule adjustments because of her kid. Greg scoffed. Single moms are the worst. They act like the world owes them something. Emma tightened her grip on the scanner. Think she'll quit? Vanessa asked. She can't afford to. That's the beauty of it. Emma forced herself to breathe evenly. That evening, as Lisa clocked out, she lingered near the front doors, checking her phone. Emma watched from a distance as Lisa sighed, typing out a message with tired fingers. Everything okay? Emma asked, approaching casually. Lisa glanced up, startled. Then, forcing a small smile, she nodded. Yeah, my babysitter just left, and my son's already asleep. I missed bedtime again. Emma didn't know what to say to that. Lisa shrugged, trying to lighten the mood. Single mom problems, right? Emma's stomach twisted. The next day, Emma found another crack in the system. A young cashier, Jordan, barely out of high school, hesitated at the register when Greg hovered nearby. You're short, Greg said, eyeing the till. Jordan's face paled. I counted twice. It was fine earlier. Greg crossed his arms. You're responsible for that drawer. If it's short, it's coming out of your paycheck. That's not fair, Jordan protested. Greg leaned in, his voice low but sharp. Fair doesn't keep the lights on, kid. Fix it or find another job. Emma's pulse pounded. Later in the stockroom, she found Jordan sitting on an overturned box, head in his hands. They do this all the time, he muttered when Emma sat beside him. Blame us for shortages, but the system's messed up. Stuff doesn't scan right, and we get punished for it. Emma frowned. You ever report it? He laughed bitterly. To who? Vanessa? Greg? They're the ones doing it. That night, Emma wrote everything down. Every manipulation, every moment of cruelty. She had enough to act. But something told her she hadn't seen the worst of it yet. And she was right. The breaking point came 3 days later. Lisa arrived early as always, but this time, Greg was waiting. You're late, he said. Lisa blinked. My shift doesn't start for another 10 minutes. Greg smirked. Well, now it starts earlier. Emma stopped stocking shelves and listened. Lisa inhaled slowly. I can't just drop everything when you change the schedule last minute. I have a child. Greg held up a hand. Spare me the speech. Either you're a team player or you're replaceable. Silence hung between them. Then Lisa did something Emma hadn't seen before. She lifted her chin. You can't just. Greg stepped closer. I can do whatever I want. Lisa swallowed hard. Emma's hands curled into fists. Greg turned away, already dismissing her. Get to work. Lisa hesitated, then obeyed. Emma's heart pounded. This wasn't just bad management. This was exploitation. By midday, the tension had settled thick in the air. Lisa moved mechanically, her usual warmth buried beneath exhaustion. Then came the final humiliation. A wealthy customer, draped in designer labels, waved Lisa over. This is defective, she said, holding up a purse. Lisa examined it. It looks like a minor scuff, but I don't care what it looks like, the woman snapped. Do your job. Greg appeared, as if summoned by the conflict. Problem. The woman huffed. Your employee is arguing with me. Lisa's eyes widened. I wasn't. Greg didn't let her finish. Apologize. Lisa froze. The woman folded her arms expectantly. Emma stepped forward, but Lisa was already speaking. I'm sorry, she murmured. Greg smiled, satisfied. Emma's stomach churned. The customer turned away, content, while Greg shot Lisa a look of triumph before walking off. Lisa stared at the floor. Emma's breath came slow and steady. She had seen enough. That night, she made the call. By tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, the store felt different. There was an edge in the air, something unspoken pressing down on the employees. Whispers floated between the aisles. An unexpected visit from corporate had been announced. Greg, normally smug and complacent, paced near the registers, straightening his tie, throwing sharp glances at the staff as if daring them to mess up. Vanessa stuck close to him, her usual smirk replaced by something tight and uncertain. Lisa moved through the store as she always did, head down, hands busy. But Emma saw the weariness in her shoulders, the way her fingers trembled slightly as she stacked a row of canned goods. She had been pushed too far for too long. Emma stood a few feet away, still in her disguise, still Anna Miller for just a little longer. But not for much longer. At exactly 11 o'clock, the doors swung open. A small group of sharply dressed executives entered, led by a woman in a charcoal suit and sleek heels. Sarah Whitmore, Caldwell Enterprises Vice President of Operations. Greg was already moving toward them, his face splitting into a carefully practiced smile. Ms. Whitmore, what a surprise. We weren't expecting. Sarah barely looked at him. We need to conduct a staff meeting. Immediately. Greg hesitated, thrown off by the cold efficiency in her tone. But he nodded, motioning for Vanessa to gather the employees. Lisa frowned as the announcement echoed through the store, but like the others, she set down her work and slowly made her way to the front. Emma followed, her heart steady. Within minutes, the entire staff stood in a loose cluster near the registers, confusion thick among them. Greg positioned himself beside Sarah, arms crossed, trying to look authoritative. Vanessa hovered at his side. Lisa stood at the back, as if trying to take up as little space as possible. Sarah cleared her throat. It has come to our attention that this store has been operating under unacceptable conditions. Before we proceed, I'd like to introduce someone. Greg turned slightly expectant. Emma stepped forward. She reached up, grasping the edge of her wig, and pulled it free. Dark brown locks tumbled down over her shoulders. She removed the baseball cap, stood a little taller, and let the disguise fall away. A ripple of shock spread through the employees. Lisa's eyes widened. Jordan's mouth fell open. Greg took a single step back, his expression frozen somewhere between disbelief and panic. My name is Emma Caldwell, she said, her voice calm but firm. And I am the CEO of this company. Silence crashed over the store. Vanessa made a strangled noise, her face draining of color. Greg's lips parted, but no words came. Emma turned slightly, letting her gaze sweep over the gathered employees. For the past week, I've been working alongside you as Anna Miller. I've seen firsthand how this store is run. I've watched good employees, hardworking employees, be disrespected, overworked, and taken advantage of. Her eyes locked onto Greg's. And I've seen exactly who is responsible for it. Greg's mouth finally caught up to his brain. Ms. Caldwell, Enough, she said, cutting him off. I heard everything. The manipulation, the threats, the outright abuse of power. Her tone remained steady, but steel-laced through each word. Employees being forced to work off the clock. Wages being docked unfairly. Promotions being denied in favor of personal favorites. And then there's the treatment of Lisa Carter. Lisa's breath hitched. Emma turned to her. You have done more for this store than anyone else here. You've covered shifts without complaint, carried the workload of 2 people, and endured humiliation no employee should ever have to face. And yet, instead of respect, you were given cruelty. She turned back to Greg. By you. Greg's face twisted, his bravado cracking. Now wait just a minute. She's unreliable. Always asking for time off, always whining about her kid. Emma's stomach churned. Enough, she said again, sharper this time. You have spent years abusing your authority, and I will not allow it to continue. Effective immediately, you are fired. Gasps rippled through the room. Greg paled. You can't. Oh, I can, Emma said, stepping closer. And I just did. Greg turned to Sarah. This is a mistake. She doesn't know how things really run here. Sarah folded her arms. Actually, I do. We reviewed security footage and employee records last night. Everything she said is backed by evidence. Your own words, Greg. You buried yourself. Greg's mouth opened and closed, searching for an argument, but there was none left. Vanessa took a small step backward, as if hoping she could fade into the background. Emma's gaze snapped to her. And you, she said. I haven't forgotten about you, Vanessa. You have been complicit in every single one of Greg's actions. You may not have been as loud, but you were just as cruel. And for that, you are also fired. Vanessa's breath hitched. Wait, Save it, Sarah said, already pulling out a termination notice. Lisa stood frozen, watching the scene unfold with wide, disbelieving eyes. Emma turned to her. You deserve more than this place has given you, she said softly. And that changes today. Lisa blinked. I don't understand. Emma smiled. Starting now, you are the new store manager. If you want the job. Lisa's breath hitched. But I don't. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I'm just an employee. No, Emma said. You're the kind of leader this company needs. Tears welled in Lisa's eyes, her hands trembling at her sides. The other employees began to stir, shock giving way to something else. Hope. Jordan grinned, barely holding back a cheer. A few of the others whispered excitedly. Greg, on the other hand, was turning an alarming shade of red. This is ridiculous, he spat. You can't just throw away years of management experience. Emma arched a brow. Management? No tyranny, yes. Greg's nostrils flared, but there was nothing left to say. Security arrived a few minutes later. As Greg and Vanessa were escorted out, Lisa let out a shaky breath, pressing a hand to her mouth as if to hold in the emotion threatening to spill over. Emma turned back to the employees. This store is going to change. No more unfair policies. No more fear. If you work hard, you will be valued. That's a promise. A quiet moment stretched between them. Then, one by one, the employees began to applaud. Lisa wiped at her eyes. Emma smiled. Justice had been served. But there was still more to do. The store was quieter after Greg and Vanessa were escorted out, but the energy in the air was something else entirely. It wasn't just relief. It was the slow realization that things were different now. Employees who had spent years walking on eggshells stood a little taller. Jordan exchanged grins with a few cashiers, and even the stockroom workers peered out, cautious but hopeful. Lisa, however, remained still. Emma watched as she pressed her hands against the counter, her breathing unsteady, eyes unfocused. It was as if her body hadn't caught up with what had just happened. Emma stepped closer, lowering her voice. Lisa. Lisa, startled, blinking up at her as if seeing her for the first time. I don't know what to say. Emma smiled gently. Then don't say anything. Just breathe. Lisa let out a shaky laugh, rubbing her hands over her arms. I keep thinking I'll wake up and none of this will be real. It's real, Emma assured her. Greg and Vanessa are gone. You don't have to take orders from people who don't respect you anymore. Lisa swallowed hard. And I'm really the manager now. Emma nodded. If you want to be. Lisa hesitated, looking around the store. I don't have any fancy degrees or management experience. I just do what needs to be done. And that's exactly why you're the right person for the job, Emma said. You already lead. You always have. Lisa's eyes filled again, but this time there was something steady in her expression. Something sure. Okay, she whispered. Then stronger. Okay. The employees erupted into cheers, and Lisa's breath hitched as Jordan clapped her on the back. For the first time in a long time, she didn't look weighed down. She looked free. The store needed work, policies to fix, morale to rebuild. But Emma knew it would be in good hands. A few hours later, after the excitement settled, Emma stood outside, looking up at the store's faded sign. This place had been a part of her family's company for years, but she had never seen it until now. Footsteps approached behind her. You really were undercover, Lisa said, stepping beside her. That's insane. Emma chuckled. It was necessary. Lisa studied her for a long moment. Why did you do it? Emma exhaled. Because I lost sight of what mattered. She turned to face Lisa fully. Somewhere along the way, I let reports and numbers become more important than people. And I should have known better. Lisa nodded slowly, understanding. Emma reached into her pocket, pulling out a business card. If you ever need anything, advice, support, or just someone to talk to, call me. Lisa hesitated, then took the card with careful fingers. Emma offered one last smile before heading toward her car. But before she could get in, Lisa called after her. Emma. She turned. Lisa stood in the doorway, the setting sun casting a golden glow around her. Thank you. Emma nodded. You don't have to thank me. You earned this. Lisa smiled, a real unburdened smile. As Emma drove away, she felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about fixing one store. It was about remembering why she built this company in the first place. And she wouldn't forget again.